1987, a radio station in Traverse City, Michigan is about to broadcast a song about a monster that does not exist. 7 feet tall, black fur over a body shaped almost like a man, a canine head, blue or amber eyes, and a scream that begins like an animal before becoming close enough to human that someone might answer it. The recording is an April Fool's prank. The song ends. For several seconds, the studio is quiet. Then the first telephone line illuminates. Another follows. Then every line on the board. The callers are not asking who wrote the joke. They are asking how the station knew what they had seen. The station invented a monster. Michigan called to say it was already there. Did the broadcast create the Michigan Dogman? Or did it give a name to something people had been seeing for years? Those possibilities should not be equally frightening. They are. On April 1st, 1987, WTCM aired a recording called The Legend. It was created by Steve Cook, a production director at the Traverse City station, and credited to a performer who did not exist. The eerie keyboard track, regional place names, and precise dates made the song sound less like something recently written and more like something recovered. It described a half-human, half-canine creature moving through northern Michigan, but the song gave the creature something more valuable than teeth. It gave it rules. The Dogman had a recognizable body, a recognizable scream, an origin in the lumber camps of 1887, and a return cycle tied to years ending in 7. 1887, 1917, 1937, 1967, and now in 1987, it was supposedly due again. A monster that can appear at any time is a frightening possibility. A monster with a date becomes an expectation. The station expected the song to last for one broadcast. Instead, listeners requested it again. Cassette copies spread through the region. Cook began receiving reports from people who said his invented description matched something they had encountered long before hearing it. Some calls were jokes. Some were impossible to verify. Others came from people who seemed less interested in attention than in finally having a word for what had frightened them. Cook did not claim that every caller had seen an unknown species. He believed many of them had seen something they could not explain. The Dogman gave that uncertainty a shape, and once the shape had been broadcast, it could be recognized everywhere. The modern Dogman story begins 100 years before the broadcast. In 1887, lumbermen in Wexford County allegedly cornered an animal they believed was a dog. The thing emerged from hiding, released an unnatural scream, and stood upright. It is an almost perfect origin story. Northern Michigan's logging camps existed where expanding industry met forests that could still feel endless. Men worked in isolation, surrounded by dangerous machinery, severe weather, and animals they often heard before they saw. Those camps produced stories about impossible creatures long before the Dogman had a name. Later retellings added more dates. In 1917, a sheriff supposedly found horses dead from fright beside enormous tracks. In 1937, near Paris, Michigan, Robert Fortney reportedly faced a pack of wild dogs. One stopped running on 4 legs, rose onto 2, and stared directly at him. But some accounts place that incident in 1938. The difference seems small. It is not. 1937 preserves the cycle. 1938 breaks it. That discrepancy shows folklore doing what folklore does best, correcting the memory until the pattern survives. There may have been strange canine stories in Michigan before Steve Cook's song, but the neat timeline, one creature, one anatomy, one 10-year schedule, becomes much easier to see after the song tells us where to look. One of the legend's most repeated encounters takes place near Big Rapids in 1961. It survives through later testimony rather than a clean, contemporary report. But its structure explains why the Dogman is difficult to forget. A night watchman lived across from the manufacturing plant he guarded. Beyond the rear fence was dense brush and marshland. His shift began after most nearby houses had gone dark. At approximately 3 a.m, he noticed movement along the chain link fence at the back of the property. At first, he assumed it was a person, someone trespassing, someone testing the fence while the plant was empty. He watched from the porch. The shape moved slowly enough that he had time to study it. Too broad through the shoulders, too tall through the torso, covered in something that absorbed the industrial light instead of reflecting it. He raised his weapon, but did not fire. The figure reached the space beneath a yard lamp and lowered itself onto 4 limbs, not the way a person drops to crawl. The movement was too smooth. The front of the body extended forward, the spine changing angle without hesitation. Then it rose again. No stumble, no need to balance. One moment it occupied the shape of an animal. The next, the posture of a man. The watchman stepped inside for his camera. That decision sounds irrational only after the creature has been given a name. At that moment, the photograph offered him a way out. If it was a person in heavy clothing, the image would prove it. If it was a bear, the image would settle it. If the darkness had distorted something ordinary, the film would show him what his eyes had done wrong. He retrieved the camera and returned to the porch. The creature was still there. That is the moment that matters. It had enough time to leave. It had not. The shape continued moving along the property, as though it knew the watchman was watching and understood that the fence stood between them. He adjusted the camera for the poor light. Long exposure, steady hands. The shutter opened. For that fraction of time, the lens required both the watchman and the creature to remain still. The photograph that survives in later retellings does not settle the encounter. It shows a dark, upright mass beneath a lamp, a broad torso, impossible snout, or motion blur shaped by expectation. The image proves almost nothing, but afterward, the watchman reportedly changed the way he worked. He carried his rifle on every nighttime round. That is where the fear survived, not in the photograph, in the behavior of the man who took it. The broadcast turned Cook into the reluctant archive of a creature he did not believe he had discovered. Reports arrived from roads, fields, backyards, and tree lines. The details varied. The emotional structure did not. A witness first believed they were looking at an ordinary animal. Then the animal changed posture. It stood, it watched, or it moved with an intention that felt recognizably human. Before the broadcast, those experiences remained private and difficult to describe. After the broadcast, the witness no longer needed a paragraph. They needed one word: Dogman. The shorter explanation traveled farther. A 10-year cycle made the legend self-renewing. When 1997 arrived, Cook received reports involving a massive canine breaking into a cabin near Luther, Michigan. He added a new verse to the song. The story had begun updating itself. In 2007, the recording was rebuilt with rustic instrumentation, replacing its unmistakably 80s sound with something closer to an inherited folk song. A modern prank gradually acquired the texture of tradition. Then came 2017, another seventh year, another round of sightings, discussions, and late-night reports, including an account attributed to a commercial driver in the Manistee National Forest. Whether any of those witnesses saw an unknown creature is not something the calendar can answer, but the cycle changes the conditions of observation. When the expected year arrives, people look longer at the tree line. A bear standing to smell the air receives another interpretation. A damaged trail camera frame is examined as evidence. Every unfamiliar sound enters a story already waiting to receive it. The legend does not need to predict an appearance. It only needs to predict attention. Years later, the legend received what almost every cryptid story eventually demands: footage. The Gable Film appeared to be an old family reel, recorded in northern Michigan during the 1970s. Its opening was deliberately ordinary. Vehicles, snow, people moving in and out of frame. The kind of accidental images that make home movies feel honest. Then the camera found something in the distance, a dark shape moving close to the ground. The person filming did what people do when fear has not yet defeated curiosity. He moved closer. The shape continued forward on four limbs, slow enough to resemble an injured animal, large enough to be difficult to identify. The camera advanced again. The creature stopped. For one moment, neither moved. Then the shape turned toward the lens. Its front half rose. The body changed from low and animal to upright and accelerating. The first steps were almost awkward. The next were not. The camera operator attempted to retreat, but continued filming. Branches crossed the frame. The image buckled. The creature gained distance too quickly. The last seconds became ground, fur, open jaws, and impact. The reel ended. The implication was clear. The camera survived. The person behind it did not. The film appeared almost perfectly designed for belief. Not clear enough to examine its anatomy. Not vague enough to dismiss the charge. Old enough to seem protected from digital manipulation, and short enough that the viewer's imagination completed the death. It was fabricated. Micah Grusa later acknowledged creating it with period film and a physical costume as a tribute to the Dogman legend. The creature had been performed. The attack had been staged. The dead cameraman had never existed. But by the time the explanation arrived, millions of viewers had already experienced the charge. The correction changed the film's status. It did not remove the memory of being chased. Proof can be withdrawn. The moment it made you afraid cannot. Reduce the modern Dogman encounter to its most repeated shape. You are driving alone after midnight. The road narrows until the trees stand close enough to catch the edges of your headlights. The radio has been losing stations for 20 miles, and the last signal collapses into static. You lower the volume. That is when you notice the forest has gone quiet, not peaceful, empty in a way that feels coordinated. No insects striking the windshield, no bird call, no movement in the brush, only the engine and the sound of your own tires passing over the seams in the road. Something appears near the shoulder ahead. At first, it is low enough to be a large dog. Then the headlights reach it. The body is wrong for a dog. Too much weight through the chest. Front limbs too long. The animal is facing away, bent over something beside the road. You slow down because the safest explanation is an injured bear. The brake lights reflect against the trees behind you. The shape stops moving. You have not honked. You have not opened the door, but it knows the vehicle is there. One ear turns toward the engine, then the head follows. The face remains hidden beyond the beam. You begin passing it, and the shape rises, not onto its hind legs to look around. It stands as though standing was the posture it had been avoiding. Its shoulders lift above the roofline. One arm hangs low enough that the hand or paw almost reaches the road. You press the accelerator. In the side mirror, the figure drops back onto four limbs. For 1 second, relief arrives. An animal again. Then it begins running. Not after the vehicle. Beside it, the shape remains just beyond the passenger window, hidden behind the trees, appearing only when gaps in the forest allow the headlights to catch it. 4 limbs, then 2, and 4 again, keeping pace without entering the road. You do not look at the passenger window. That becomes the rule. As long as you do not look directly at it, the shape remains outside. The forest ends at a small clearing. The headlights spread wide enough that there should be nowhere for it to hide. Nothing crosses the beam. Nothing appears in the mirror. The sound beside the vehicle stops. You continue driving. 3 miles later, the radio finds a station. A man is talking about the weather. Ordinary, bored, 2 in the morning. Then, underneath him, quiet enough that you turn it up to be sure, something screams. It begins like an animal. It does not end like one. You turn the radio off. The scream continues for another second before it stops. In 1987, a radio station collected private uncertainty and gave it one name. The internet performs that process instantly. A dark frame is uploaded. Thousands of strangers brighten it, crop it, slow it down, and decide what the missing pixels contain. The most recognizable explanation becomes the title. The most frightening frame becomes the thumbnail. The comments supply anatomy of the camera never captured. Now the process is changing again. The Gable Film required planning, vintage stock, a physical costume, and a performer willing to charge the camera. The next false Dogman can be created without entering the woods. Its movements can be generated, its film grain added afterward, its witness invented, its evidence optimized for the exact audience most prepared to believe it. The next year, ending in 7, will not suffer from too little footage. It will suffer from too much. The next year, ending in 7, is 2027. The forests will be the same. The cameras will be better. The feeds will be faster. Someone will upload a shape moving between the trees. Maybe a bear, a person in a suit, a compression artifact, a generated image designed to resemble evidence, or something that was waiting for the cameras to improve. That is the part that should bother you. Not that the next image may be false, that we no longer require an image before we recognize the monster. We gave it a name. We gave it a body. We gave it a year to return. And now all it needs is a signal. This is Urban Dread. The city never sleeps, and neither should you.